Hey everyone, happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah, it's that time of year again, hearts and flowers and all that,
Yeah, chocolate and roses.
chocolate and roses.
Yeah.
But we're going to do something a little different today.
Yeah, a little darker.
Yeah, a little bit darker, a little bit I don't know, maybe a little more realistic. We're going to take a deep dive into the history of Valentine's Day.
The real history.
The real history, yeah.
Yeah.
And might not be what you think.
Definitely not all hearts and flowers.
No, definitely not. So to give you a little preview, we're going to be talking about, well, beheadings.
Yeah.
That's right, beheadings. Not exactly the most romantic image.
Not the typical Valentine's Day image.
No, not at all. But we're going to trace the evolution of this holiday from those, I guess you could say, bloody beginnings all the way to our modern ideas about love. So buckle up. It's going to be a wild ride.
It's going to be quite a journey, yeah, from Roman martyrs to romantic poetry, and from those, like you were saying, those practical partnerships to, like this kind of modern search for self-love. Yeah, it's a lot.
It's a lot.
But it's fascinating to see just how much our understanding of love has changed over time.
So where do we even begin with this?
Well, I think we have to start with those poor Valentines.
Okay, yeah, let's start with the Valentines.
Yeah. So we have two of them.
Wait, two?
Yeah, two Saint Valentines.
I did not know that.
Yeah, two priests who were executed on February 14th.
Oh, wow.
By the Roman Empire.
So both on the same day.
Same day, yeah.
And this is where we get Valentine's Day.
That's the origin story, at least.
Wow. Okay, so tell me about these guys.
So both of them were defying authority in the name of love, in a way. One was secretly performing marriages for soldiers.
Secret marriages?
Yeah, even though there was an imperial ban on it. The emperor didn't want soldiers getting married.
I wonder why.
Well, I guess they thought it would distract them from their duties.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And the other Valentine, he was imprisoned for helping Christians, and legend has it, he cured his jailer's daughter of blindness right before being executed.
Wow, that's
pretty miraculous.
That is pretty miraculous. So these guys were kind of like rebels, in a way, standing up for what they believed in, even if it meant, defying the emperor himself.
Exactly, yeah. And their actions, even though they were seen as subversive at the time, they were really rooted in, like, this deep compassion and belief in the power of love.
Yeah.
It's pretty ironic, right?
It is, yeah.
That they become symbols of romantic love because they were challenging the very norms of their society.
Yeah, fighting against the grain. So we've got these, these early stories of love intertwined with defiance and sacrifice. And then, like, how do we get from there to Valentine's Day as we know it? Like, how do we get to the cards and the chocolates?
Well, that's where Geoffrey Chaucer comes in. You know Chaucer.
Yeah, Canterbury Tales, Chaucer.
That's the one. But he also wrote this poem called Parliament of Fowls.
Okay, never read that one.
You should check it out. It was written in the 14th century, and it basically depicts birds choosing their mates on Valentine's Day.
So wait, birds choosing mates on Valentine's Day? That's how we get from beheadings to, like, romantic love.
It's a bit of a jump, I know, but
Yeah.
it's a much more, I guess, romantic image than beheadings.
Yeah, definitely. But there's got to be more to it, right? Come on, birds choosing mates. That's a little
A little on the nose.
yeah, a little on the nose for Chaucer, He's
Right.
usually a little more subtle.
Exactly. And some scholars believe that the poem was actually an allegory, possibly referencing the marriage negotiations of King Richard II and Anne of Bohemia.
Oh, so there's a hidden meaning there.
Yeah, maybe a little political commentary snuck in there. And speaking of, like, intense love, Richard was so distraught when Anne died that he had their entire palace demolished.
Yeah, their entire palace demolished.
Yeah, like, completely destroyed it. Talk about dramatic.
Wow, that's pretty intense.
It is.
But I guess that was, like, normal back then,
Mm-hmm.
to have that level of, like, I don't know, dramatic grief.
Well, that's a good question, right? Like, what's considered normal when it comes to love?
Yeah.
It's really influenced by the social norms of the time. Like, what was acceptable back then might seem completely over the top today.
So true. And speaking of changing norms, let's fast forward a few centuries. Let's go to America.
Okay, yeah.
I was reading this work by James Horton on the history of love in America, and he talks about these distinct phases of love, and it's really fascinating. Have you heard of this?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Horton's work is really insightful. He basically argues that before the 1800s, agrarian love dominated.
Agrarian love. What is that?
Yeah, basically practicality was key. So, like, Can your partner help you run a farm?
Yeah.
Can they help you raise a family? It was all about, survival, practicality, and love was seen as this like slow burn, developing gradually through shared work and life experiences.
Wow, that's a far cry from like our modern swipe left culture.
Oh yeah, completely different world. But then in the early 1800s, things start to shift, and we see the rise of what Horton calls romantic love.
Okay, so this is where it starts to get a little more familiar.
Yeah, this is where we get the idea of finding your one true soulmate, a match ordained by God, the whole 9 yards.
So like all the rom-coms and love songs, they all stem from this idea of romantic love.
Pretty much, yeah. It's this really powerful cultural force. But I can imagine that it also put a lot of pressure on people, especially women.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, single women in particular faced intense societal pressure to find this, like, God-approved match. It wasn't just about personal happiness anymore. It was tied into religious and social expectations.
Wow, that's a lot to handle. And then, so this idea of romantic love has really shaped, like, how we view relationships even today. But Horton talks about a third phase, right?
Yes, he does.
What did he call it? I can't remember.
Partnership love.
Partnership love, that's right.
It emerges in the 1960s.
Okay.
And this phase emphasizes, like, equality, mutual growth, becoming better versions of yourselves together.
So it's more about, like, collaboration.
Exactly. It's a much more collaborative approach to love and relationships.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely resonates a lot more with how many people view relationships today.
Definitely.
But, it makes me think, this focus on partnership, does it mean that you need a partner to grow and be your best self?
That's a really interesting question, and it's something that Michelle Kilpatrick explores in her writing.
Okay, and who is Michelle Kilpatrick?
She's a writer and thinker who's done a lot of work on, like, self-love and relationships. And she talks about this pivotal experience she had when she was living in Washington, D.C. She was away from her boyfriend at the time, and she had this realization that she was actually thriving on her own.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she was, like, having more fun. She was more productive. She felt more herself. It was a real aha moment for her.
I can imagine. That must have been, like, pretty powerful for her to realize. What happened next? Like, did she go back to her boyfriend?
No, actually, it was a turning point for her. She realized that she had been trying to fit into this, like, marriageable mold, and in the process, she had been shrinking herself down. But by embracing singlehood, she was able to explore her own interests, her own passions, and it led to this, like, really profound sense of self-discovery.
So her story is really about, like, finding yourself regardless of your relationship status.
Exactly, yeah. And it shows how, like, our understanding of love continues to evolve. We've moved from these pragmatic partnerships to passionate romance, and now we're exploring the importance of self-love and individual fulfillment, whether we're in a relationship or not.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing when you think about it. From beheadings to birds to modern self-discovery. What a journey.
It is quite a journey.
Well, it makes you think about, what will love look like for future generations? Like, will they even celebrate Valentine's Day?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
If love has gone through such dramatic shifts over the centuries, I mean, who knows what forms it might take in the future?
Yeah, it could be anything.
Absolutely.
Maybe that's the takeaway for our listeners this Valentine's Day. To reflect on what love means to them and all its complexities and, ever-evolving forms.
I love that.
Happy Valentine's Day, everyone.
Happy Valentine's Day.